So welcome back to knowledge check. So in today's session we'll be solving this module 6 knowledge check. So let's start the knowledge check. Question number 1. Which definition describe a virtual private cloud VPC? A virtual private network VPC is in the AWS cloud, an extension of an on-premise network into Amazon Web Services, a logically isolated virtual network that you define in AWS cloud, a fully managed service that extends the AWS cloud to customer premises. So the answer should be a logically isolated virtual network that we can define in the AWS cloud. So question number 2. Which 3 actions are best practices for designing a virtual private cloud VPC? So we need to select 3 here. So when we create a VPC, what should we keep in mind? Match the size of the VPC classless shader block to the number of hosts that are required for a workload. Use the same classless CIDR block as your on-premise network. Divide the VPC network range evenly across all availability zones. Available. Create one subnet per availability zones for each group of hosts that have unique routing requirements, and reserve some address space for future use. So the answer should be we need to divide the VPC range evenly across all availability zones available, and then the other options could be we need to create one subnet per availability zone so that we can group hosts to have the unique routing requirements, and then we can also reserve some address space for future use. So let's say we require much more addresses in future, so we can reserve that. So this should be the 3 options. So a company wants to run a highly available web tier by using 2 EC2 instances and a load balancer. Which design is valid and provides the highest availability? One subnet in one availability zone. The subnet contains 2 EC2 instances. One subnet which spans 2 availability zones. Each availability zone contains 1 EC2 instance. 2 different subnets in the same availability zone. Each subnet contains 1 EC2 instance. 2 different subnets, 1 per availability zone. Each subnet contain 1 EC2. Each subnet contains 1 EC2 instance. So here the answer should be 2 subnets, 1 per availability zone. So I think it should be the answer. So it's correct. So question number 4. A company's VPC has a CIDR block of 172.16.0.021. So it says it needs to have 2048 addresses. It has 2 subnets, A and B. Each subnet must support 100 usable address now, but this number is expected to rise to at most 254 usable addresses soon. Which subnet address scheme meets the requirement and follow AWS best practices? So like we can easily see from here 254 usable addresses. So it can rise up to 254 usable addresses. So let's say if we add 128 addresses here and 1024 addresses here. So like the simple way to solve this answer should be sum up these addresses. So we have 1024 and 128, 128 and 1024. Let's add, it's 1140 something. And so if we add 128 and 172, it doesn't even support 254 addresses. So this we can eliminate this. And then when we add this and this, we are getting something more than 1140. So I think it's 52. And when we add 512 and 512, it's 1024. So I think the lowest possible answer is 512 and 512. So I hope you understand how I choose this. So it says we can have 507 usable addresses, and we should always remember that there are 5 reserve address for that for the AWS, right? So question number 5. Which combination of action enable direct internet access for IPv4 host in a VPC? So we need to choose 3 answers here. Create a route for address that points to the internet gateway. Confirming security groups and NACLs to permit internet traffic. Create a default route that points to the virtual private gateway. Configuring the VPC domain name in a dynamic host configuration protocol, DHCP protocol, option set. configuring host to have or obtain an internet routable address, or enabling DNS resolution for the VPC. So here the answer should be, one option could be creating a route for this address and point it to the internet gateway, and the other could be configure a security group and NSCLs to permit internet access. So this way we can connect to the internet using from the private subnet. The other should be configuring host to obtain an internet routable address. So I think this three should be the correct answer. So host need internet routable address that are obtained statically, dynamically, or by address translation. So this is the answer. So let's continue with question number 6. A group of consultants require access to an EC2 instance from the internet for 3 consecutive days each week. The instance is shut down for the rest of the week. The virtual private cloud VPC has internet access. How should you assign an IPv4 address to the instance to give the consultant access? Associate an elastic IP address with the EC2 instance. Enable automatic address assignment for the subnet. Enable automatic address assignment for the EC2 instance. Assign the IP address in the operating system boot configuration. So I think in this case the correct answer should be like associating an elastic IP address with the EC2 instance. So this should be the answer. So using an elastic IP address, like, it ensures that we have the same internet address. So several EC2 instances launched in a virtual private cloud VPC that has internet access. These instances should not be accessible from the internet, but they must be able to download updates from the internet. How should the instances launch? With elastic IP addresses in a subnet with a default route to an internet gateway. With public IP addresses in a subnet with a default route to an internet gateway. Without public IP addresses in a subnet with a default route to an internet gateway. Without public IP addresses in a subnet with the default route to a network address translation gateway. So this answer is pretty simple. It should be NAT gateway. So this is the right answer. So question number 8. You are configuring a Bastion host to access EC2 instance in a 2 private cloud VPC. So what must you do to the security group? So we need to choose two here. Add a rule to the Bastion host to deny all traffic from the internet. Add a rule to the Bastion host to allow traffic from your source IP address. Add a rule to the Bastion host to allow return traffic to your source IP address. Add a rule to the private subnet EC2 instance to allow traffic from the Bastion host security group, or add a rule to the private EC2 instances to allow return traffic to the Bastion host security group. The answer here should be pretty simple. So we need to allow the traffic from the source IP address and add a rule to the public subnet instance to allow traffic from the Bastion host and security group. So I think this should be the 2 answer. Yes, so it's correct. So let's continue with question number 9. So we have a VPC with a public subnet and a secure subnet. All EC2 instances in the secure subnet must be able to communicate with specific internet address. So how can you control traffic with a network address control list? Add rule to the default network ACL to allow traffic to an allowed internet address. Add rule to the default network ACL to allow traffic from and to allowed internet access. Deny all other traffic. Add rules to the subnet custom network ACL to allow traffic from and to allowed internet addresses. Add a rule to the subnet custom network ACL to allow traffic from to. So since we are like adding to the secure subnet, so I think the correct answer should be custom network ACL. So correct. So question number 10. All of the EC2 instances in a subnet can communicate with a certain IPv4 network on the internet. How should you modify the security groups or custom network ACL list to deny traffic to and from several restricted addresses in the network? In the network ACL, deny traffic to and from the restricted address. In the security group, deny traffic to and from the restricted address. In the network ACL, allow traffic only to and from the address range that exclude the restricted addresses. In the security group, allow traffic only to and from address ranges that exclude the restricted addresses. So the correct answer should be in the network ACL. We can add deny traffic to and from the restricted address. So I think this way, this should be the correct answer. So yes, this is the correct answer. So yes, so we are able to score 100% here. So I hope you are also able to solve these 10 questions, and hope to see you in another module. Bye bye.